Well, a very good morning to you once again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Dave Jackson here on our system that we call NBBC. That's Newcastle Beaches Broadcasting Company, with the second in a series of podcasts highlighting scams and what's going on the internet today, which is trying very, very hard to take money from your pocket. And unfortunately, a lot of these scammers are becoming very successful at what they do. A lot of people are falling for some very, very silly scams. In our last episode, we spoke about a very old scam back in the 80s whereby people were actually cloning telephones and costing a lot of folks a lot of money on their telephone bills. This was the old-fashioned analog mobile phones. Of course, now we've got digital mobile phones, so the system's a little bit more secure with our smartphones. But today, we're going to talk about some of the scams that we've uncovered over the last year, because there's been some absolute doozies. And I must say this, out of all the scams that we're going to cover and expose how they work and what they do, there is one common denominator. And that common denominator is if you are contacted by anybody, either by phone or by email or by the internet on a website, there's one thing that runs through all of these. If you don't know who you're dealing with, don't deal with them. I should say this to you. A lot of websites use what's known as now as KYC. And in case you didn't know this, KYC stands for Know Your Customer. Now, if companies want to know who they're dealing with, then why shouldn't you know who you're dealing with? Whether it's a legitimate company based here in Australia or any other country around the world, or whether they're a potential scam. Sometimes that can be very, very difficult to get the information that you need, because believe you me, even I have been caught out with a scam whereby a company had a company registration number. They were registered on the official company's list, and they were still scammers because all that information they had stolen. Please be aware that if you're not sure who you're dealing with, don't deal with them. When somebody calls you or somebody emails you and says, "Hello, I'm Bob from, let's say, NBN," don't believe them, because they could be anybody. And this is a common denominator throughout all scams. You just don't believe what people are telling you because they contacted you. Take down the company details. Do some research. See if you can find an office. Ring their number that's listed on their website or on their official company registration papers. But make sure that you do that first of all. That's what runs through all of these scams. Okay, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about a couple of these scams after this.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Dave Jackson here. Now, we're broadcasting from a system that we call NBBC, that's Newcastle Beaches Broadcasting Company, but we're doing a series of programs which I would like to call Financial Freedom FM. In this case, FM doesn't stand for frequency modulated, it stands for family media. Now, we'll make some programs here and some podcasts, and we hope you have a listen, and we hope you find some of this stuff interesting. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can always call or text our studio number, which is +61 for Australia, 0468 404 844. That's +61 for Australia, 0468 404 844, or simply send us an email, studio@nbbc@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Once again, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is Dave Jackson here with the podcast. We're talking about scams, and of course we're on the medium of NBBC. This is Newcastle Beaches Broadcasting Company. Don't forget, as the little commercial that we played a little while ago just simply said, if you want to get in touch with us, we have a studio phone number here, +61 for Australia, 0468 404 844. or you can send us an email, and that would be to studio@nbbc@gmail.com. Now, in our first episode of this podcast, we spoke about a scam that was happening during the early 80s and the mid-80s. Well, now we're going to come right up to date with something that's actually happened to me, and this was only a few weeks ago. We're talking now, we're just before Christmas, actually. When we're recording this, it's just before Christmas 2024. We are, in fact, on the 20th of December 2024. Now, a few weeks ago, my wife and I were out to dinner, having a lovely meal with some friends at a local club not far from where we live, when suddenly I started receiving texts on WhatsApp from a friend of mine. Now, he's a guy that I'm obviously not going to mention his name, but he does belong to a club that I belong to. And he was telling me that he was going to end his life. He was going to commit suicide. He had all the tablets that he had in the house, and he had them all sitting out on the big row, and he was about to take them all. And he did actually take all of these tablets. He was going to end his life. Now, he was going to end his life because of this. He'd gone through a very, very bitter divorce recently. They finally settled on their divorce and got the house sorted out and anything else. So that wasn't very pleasant for his part of his life. He had 2 children. He's got 2 kids. But he met a girl online on one of these online dating apps. I'm not too sure which one it was. There's about 10,000 of them out there, and I think they're all as good as each other, or all as bad as each other, I should say. Sometimes these relationships work. We've got some friends who've met somebody online and they've had a wonderful relationship, now married very happily with kids, which is marvellous. But sometimes these things don't work, and unfortunately for this chap, this didn't work. He was talking to this girl, and she was an Australian, but she was actually currently in America, according to her. Now, he got to know this girl over 6, 7, 8 months, and they were chatting, and he thought he'd fallen in love with her. I think he'd even had a video call, so he had seen this girl. It wasn't a fake person with a fake profile online, but he had actually seen this person, and they'd met each other over a Zoom call or Skype or whatever it may have been. So he thought he was in love with her. Now, she starts to tell him that she's in America currently, because she's trying to sort out her uncle's will, and she's been left a substantial amount of money. The first part of this money that she'd received from some sort of payout from something that they may have sold as part of the estate was somewhere in the region of 35,000 Australian dollars. She then asked this person that I knew if he had an Australian bank account. Could she put this money into his bank account? Now, for me personally, this would be ringing alarm bells like you wouldn't believe. But unfortunately, for this friend of mine, he was so besotted with this girl, and after coming through a very nasty divorce, thought he'd found himself another partner, which unfortunately wasn't the case. So he said, yes, I've just opened an account to sort out my mortgage, and there's no money in it, so you can put the money in there. So she did. She placed this money, I think it was about $35,000 into this account. The money was transferred and it was in his account. Now, the next stage, I cannot believe that he said yes to this. She said, now I need to send this to another member of my family, but I need to send it in cryptocurrency. So could you transfer this money from your bank account into a crypto platform and then send it to this crypto address, which is basically a blockchain address? If you've never seen blockchain before, get yourself onto YouTube and look at any of the addresses when you copy and paste that into an email or to a text message to a friend. That little series of squiggles and lines and 1s and 3s and forward slashes and backslashes is effectively exactly the same as a blockchain address. It's an address that is unique. But when you send something to it, in this case a cryptocurrency, and in this case it was Bitcoin, the chances of you ever getting that money back again is pretty remote. You can't trace it very, very easily. So I don't know why he's done this, and at the time all this was going on, I wasn't even in the country. We were overseas visiting our family and friends. Otherwise, if he'd have told me, which he wouldn't, I'd have said to him, stay well away from that. So he's now done this. He's accepted $35,000 into an Australian account. He's now transferred that to a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency platform and now transmitted it to a blockchain address somewhere. Now what happens is she now says goodbye, or doesn't say goodbye. She disappears. So he thinks that this relationship that he's going to have, which is going to be wonderful, is now gone. The next thing he knows, he's being contacted by solicitors because this girl, whoever she was, has embezzled that money illegally out of a company here in Australia, taken the money, put it into his account, and the people who this money has been embezzled from are now chasing this gentleman to get their money back, thinking that was him that instigated the scam. Of course it wasn't, it was a third party. Now he can prove this because all the emails that this company that had been embezzled came from this girl's email address, not his. So now we've got a solicitor on the case, and they're saying you've got to submit a defence for this court case that's going to go to court in Brisbane. You've got to have a defence lodged by a certain date, and this date came up, and it happened to be the day that we were out to dinner, and of course it got too much for him. Today was the day. If he doesn't submit a defence to this court case that's impending, he is going to be hit with a bill for 35 grand. Now, this lad tried to kill himself, but luckily for us, we found out in time when he was sending me a text message, which basically is a call for help. And it was me personally that rang the police and got them to go to his address, and they found him slumped on the floor after taking all these medications. Too many medications all in one go. Crazy. I said to him later, he survived because they picked him up, put him in an ambulance, took him off to hospital, and he's fine. And I said to him, you were going to kill yourself over $35,000. It's a sad fact of life. How many people get into such a mental depressed state over money? I sort of laugh at money. Money has come and gone into our hands like you wouldn't believe over the years. We've been wealthy, we've been poor. We've been wealthy again, we've been poor. Certain circumstances through life just, unfortunately, you can either be lucky or you can be unlucky. Well, we've been both. And realistically, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we've all got our health. We've got a healthy family, a lovely family. And as long as we're all healthy, then money can go up and down like a fiddler's elbow. Who cares? But to actually commit suicide over $35,000, ridiculous. So anyway, I've drummed this into his brain, and he says that he would never do it again, and I've been helping him fight this court case. We now find out, of course, that the court case doesn't exist. The bank originally said to him, don't contact these people. It seems to me like it's all part of the same scam. So I'm making you aware of this. If anybody ever comes across online and says, I love you, I want to have a relationship with you for the rest of my life, and then starts asking to put money into your bank account, what they are doing is they are laundering money. They want to process it through somebody else's account so it can be lost within the system, and the more bank accounts it goes through, the more difficult it is to trace. Please don't ever get into anything like this. It's crazy. So that was the most recent scam that we have experienced from a dating app. You've got to be very careful. I think the only way to meet anybody on a dating app, have a chat, of course, and have your little Zoom calls and have your little Skype calls, but eventually you're going to need to meet face to face to see if you're compatible and to see if somebody is actually legitimate. And it takes a long time to do that. It's a really sad thing now that we rely so much on technology, especially to meet other people. Me personally, back in my day, I used to meet girls when I was going out with girls in nightclubs or in bars or in pubs. And in fact, a few girls that I've met over the years, I met them in the street because they were just walking down the street and I started chatting to them. But that's me. I'm the different sort of person to the average person who perhaps couldn't do that. So that was the most recent scam, and I would love to hear anybody else that's had any experiences like this with online dating apps who have been asked to do things with money and bank accounts. Please get in touch with us. 0468 404 844 is the phone number, +61 for Australia, or an email will suffice, studio.nbbc@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening. We'll do another podcast very shortly, and what we're going to do now, we've done the oldest scam, we've done the most recent scam, and in the next podcast we're going to fill in all the bits in between, and there is so much to tell you about, and I just hope that some of this information is useful to somebody somewhere, and someone can actually not be scammed and lose all their money. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. This is David signing off for now. We'll be back in the next podcast in the next few days.